Hey everybody, it's Mike Schellenberger for Public. For more than a decade, the news media, Democrats, and Hollywood have told us that Western civilization in general, and the United States in particular, are white supremacist, genocidal, and unsustainable. The founding of America occurred not in 1776, but rather in 1619 with the beginning of slavery, whose effects are felt more strongly than ever. The original colonies and the expansion of the western frontier depended on the extermination of indigenous people and the theft of their lands. And our crimes against nature have resulted in apocalyptic climate change, which requires radical changes to the way we live our lives. The consequences of this self-hating woke ideology can be seen today in the catastrophic fires, mass evacuations, and burned rubble of Los Angeles. So-called progressives finally achieved what they supposedly had warned of, but in reality had wished for: the eviction of the affluent descendants of colonizers, the incineration of their homes, and the destruction of a city that, more than any other, represents our bloody history of white supremacy and conquest. Now, I'm not suggesting that Democrats consciously sought to destroy Los Angeles. The entertainment industry professionals who lived in places like Malibu, Topanga Canyon, and Pacific Palisades, who voted overwhelmingly for California's progressive governor, Gavin Newsome, and for LA's radical left mayor, Karen Bass, thought they were voting for social justice and sustainability. They didn't imagine that their vote would result in their homes burning down. And yet that's exactly what their votes resulted in. Over the last 24 hours, the evidence of gross mismanagement and incompetence by both Newsome and Bass has only grown more overwhelming. On January 2nd, a full 8 days ago, the National Weather Service urgently warned of extreme fire conditions. To drive home the point, the National Weather Service's Los Angeles office held a briefing warning of impending catastrophe. On that day, Newsome and Bass should have called out the National Guard. They should have had planes and helicopters circling over Los Angeles, spotting fires and putting them out immediately upon detecting them. They should have issued emergency warnings to residents, particularly those in vulnerable areas. And they should have used various methods to spray water, including mobile sprinkler units, alongside normal firefighting to wet down the vulnerable areas. Instead, the following day, Karen Bass flew to Ghana on a frivolous junket, and Gavin Newsome only called out the National Guard yesterday, 7 days later than he should have. In truth, that's just the tip of the iceberg. Newsome and Bass should have constructed 2 to 3 times more water reservoirs than Los Angeles has in order to deal with fires of that magnitude. Newsome and Bass should have not only built water recycling and desalination plants like they have in Israel, they should have built them with excess capacity so that in an emergency, those plants could have pumped significantly more fresh water to supplement the water in the reservoirs. And instead of emptying the prisons and jails, subsidizing rampant homelessness, eliminating penalties for breaking the law, and allowing addicts, the mentally ill, and others to camp everywhere and start fires, Newsome and Bass should have cracked down on the rampant disorder and violent crime, all of which have skyrocketed under their misrule. It now appears that at least one of the fires was started by a homeless man. And whether or not that proves to be the case, over half of all fires put out by the LA Fire Department are started by the homeless, which has diverted the agency from doing what it should have been doing, which was to prevent catastrophic fires, including by putting them out as soon as they start. So why didn't they? Why did Newsome and Bass make so many catastrophic errors? Well, part of the reason is that they are self-centered and craven politicians. They're typical of the people who hold office in California. They claim to care about society's victims. In truth, they care only about themselves and their self-image. Newsome, Bass, and other California politicians are uninterested in doing a good job and instead are obsessed with their own personal careers and promotions. For that reason, they've been focused like a laser on playing politics rather than on governing. Now, another reason is that they're beholden to affluent, radical left, environmentalists, and social justice donors who live in places like Marin County and Hollywood. These are the same people who bankroll radical left groups like the Sierra Club and the Natural Resources Defense Council, and who have successfully blocked desalination and water storage plants, the proper clearing of flammable debris in forests, and the effective management of landscapes around housing development for over 45 years. Before that, the same groups and financial interests had halted the expansion of nuclear power, which is the perfect energy source for desalination. These are the same people who demanded that homeless encampments be allowed to spread throughout the city and that addicts and the mentally ill be given free housing with no strings attached. All of these things were done in the name of saving the environment, of social justice, and of saving Black lives. The result was the destruction of the environment, grotesque injustice, and the disproportionate loss of Black lives, including from violent crime, which increased 15% since Newsome took office and grew to be 31% higher than the national average. For decades, Hollywood has cranked out movies and television depicting the exhaustion of natural resources and climate change as causing an apocalypse. Yesterday, some reporters and scientists blamed climate change for the lack of rain in LA. That is ridiculous. There is no trend in annual rainfall from 1877 to 2024. We have wet years and dry years. Destroying civilization in this way turned out to be expensive, not cheap. Californians pay the highest taxes for the most expensive gasoline, electricity, and water in the nation. Under Newsome, we spent $24 billion to increase homelessness by 40%. Both ancient wisdom and modern psychology teach us that one can understand a person's motivation by the consequences of their actions. California's Democrats, progressives, and politicians lied when they said their highest priority was protecting the people of California. They lied when they said they cared about social justice. And they lied when they said they cared about protecting the environment. Instead, what they cared about was destroying the civilization they had long ago decided was evil. All civilizations require a story. The story that built Los Angeles and California was one of human progress. The story that's destroyed it is one of human sin. For decades, progressives, Democrats, the news and entertainment media preached that civilization was evil and doomed. Slavery, indigenous genocide, and climate change were proof. And now, as the City of Angels smolders, it's clear that progressives have reaped what they sowed. Thanks for listening.